This might be the first time I have a baby in the background.
Oh, it's okay if you got a baby. Mine might come downstairs. Hey, everyone. Episode 31 here, Talking Shop with Outlier Firefighters. I'm Alex Tanner, your host here. I'm here with Rob Ramirez. Rob, thanks for coming on. A little afternoon session, lunchtime, talking some shop.
Awesome. Thanks for having me, brother.
I'm pretty excited because we've texted and we've chatted a little bit here and there about RIT because I went to that RIT class in IFSI, and I know that you have made a mindset, which has been awesome, and you're really spreading that word around and getting a lot of people fired up in a way, right? We're going to go right into the questions. If you are here live and you want to ask Rob a question, fire it away, but we're going to start off with where he comes from, and what he's doing. So what was your first exposure to the fire service?
Man, so first and foremost, thanks for having me on again. Love talking shop. I can do this all day. We just talked about the kids. We both got a bunch of kid stuff in the background. I'm cheating for anybody watching. I'm in the corner of a room. It's way smaller than it looks, and that's all I have that belongs to me in the background. The rest of it looks just like freaking Alex's over here. I got baby toys everywhere, but we're gonna try to make it through this, Alex. Yeah, man. Honestly, the fire service for me started in high school. I was a baseball player. I played football my senior year and junior year. I played baseball all 4 years, and I grew up in a locker room. I always talk to the guys at the firehouse about that. I grew up in a locker room atmosphere. I don't have any brothers. I do have a sister. Parents are working class immigrants. I'm first generation U.S. Mom and dad migrated from Cuba in the 50s and 60s and 70s. Family finally made it over, and my sister and I were the first ones to go to school in the U.S., speak English and all that. So dad did a real good job keeping me off the streets and keeping me busy, whether it was martial arts or, baseball or football. I was always doing something. I was never just idle hands. There was never that idle hands moment at home. So fast forward to how I became interested. I wasn't. I had no idea what the fire service was. First generation, like no one in my family, no one in my neighborhood. I never met a fireman. And one of the guys on my baseball team in high school, his dad was a fireman. And during the off season, he would ride at the firehouse in this cadet explorer program down at Miami-Dade Fire Rescue, which I'm in Miami, South Florida. And one summer, he's like, "Hey man, what are you doing? Come to this meeting with me. We're gonna go ride with the firemen, this, that, or the other." I think it was our junior or sophomore year of high school. And I went over reluctantly, not knowing what to expect, having never been in a firehouse before. And immediately I felt like I had just walked into a locker room. It was the funny guy, the short guy, the tall guy, the athlete. Everybody's breaking chops, busting balls. And when the tones dropped, it was just straight professionalism. And it was such a comfortable atmosphere for me that I immediately thought to myself, just being that young, if I ever get out of high school, because I didn't even know I was going to get out of high school, if I ever get out of high school and I'm not playing sports anymore, this is the job for me, because I knew I wasn't going to go to college and be quote unquote, a professional student. So that's how I ended up learning about the fire service. And honestly, like I said earlier, my dad was a butcher, first generation immigrant, working 2 jobs, 3 jobs to keep the family afloat in the country and not speaking the language. So he wasn't home much. So that program itself, having me go to the firehouse, meet these other men that had jobs and careers and families, showed me a whole other view of the world. It's a 180 of where I was growing up and what was possible. And they played a lot of those roles at times when I would mess up. I get a boot in my ass. There's an old saying that says a pat in the ass. I'm sorry, a pat in the back and a kick in the ass. Both have to come from the same place, from your heart. And those guys were really good about that, man. They'd kick me in the ass when I messed up, and they pat me in the back when I do good. But it all came from the heart. And they turned the little kid into a fireman.
That's
It's a
awesome.
true story.
Yeah, that's cool. I mean, just everybody finds it somehow in their own way. It's just so that's why I love asking the question right off the bat, because
Yeah.
especially I have one of my friends who's a first generation,
Mm-hmm.
and his parents were immigrants from Mexico, and it's such an awesome story to hear the hard work that comes from that, and then the opportunity that you get to join the fire service and be a professional. It's always, I always love hearing those stories. So
It's all I know. It's all I
yeah.
know. It's all I know. 15 years old is all I know. I got hired at 22 after that. Between that, I went to fire school, EMT school, paramedic school, and got on the job. It's all I knew for many, many years. Is all I knew. I've been spoiled. I've been very spoiled. I grew up in a firehouse my entire life. My dad wasn't a fireman.
That's cool. Yeah. So when you got hired, until now. What's your career path been, and where are you at in terms of like your rank and the things that you're into? I know that you're into a lot, which is amazing, and it's really cool to read your bio. But share with everybody what you're doing and where
So
you went
I
through.
got on the job like everyone else. Just trying to learn the job, even though I had been a cadet and explore. It's different when you're actually the guy in charge. I worked at hospitals as a paramedic. I worked at different odd jobs like on my days off in the medical field, because in Florida we run a fire-based EMS service, right? And that fire-based EMS service runs out of the firehouse, but they also have fire duty. So our ambulances run fire duty, and they supplement or augment the response. They supplement the assignments in the fire ground. So you'll get a truck, you'll get an engine, and then you'll get an ambulance. But the ambulance actually has bunker gear, and their firemen just doing their time on the box, and they'll eventually cross the floor and hit one of the other trucks later on in their career. So knowing that we all were going to start there, I focused a lot in the beginning on the paramedicine component, and I realized right away that this wasn't my speed. I was more interested in the other side of the house, but I had to pay my dues. Went through the ranks, became a lieutenant eventually, somewhere around year 5, very young. I got hired at 22. I want to say at 20, right around 26, 27, I got my first promotion to lieutenant. And then that kept me in that rank for about 13 years before I got promoted to captain. In that 13-year time frame, I took a 5-year stint where I was moved over to 40-hour. And for us, we're off the floor and assigned to training. So I was the training officer for 5 years. And the reason I went, Alex, to training at the time was because I'm a trainer. I like to teach. It's something that happens. You don't choose it. I was like, yeah, let me see how this teaching thing goes. That was the last choice I made. After that, it became very organic, and people were being receptive, and I enjoyed it, and I was learning as much as I was teaching, and sometimes even more. And I wasn't happy with the way training was going by our fire department at the time. And you can only bitch so much about something before you step up and take that leap and try to fix it yourself. I didn't want to be that guy who just complained. So I jumped on that, horse and ran our training division for 5 years and got to do a lot of global changes and things that impacted the organization to this day. I've been out of training now since 2018. I've been back to a truck as a captain, and I really, 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 really enjoyed my time there, to the point where I think everybody should have a run on a 40-hour gig, because I learned so much when I went to 40 hours for 5 years. From the firehouse, it's my guys, my crew, my truck, my responsibilities, our training, our house, our fire hose, our truck company, our ladder, our needs, our broken dishwasher, our so on and so forth. The toilet's not this, the urinal's not that. When you show up to administration, now you're doing it for every firehouse, for every company, across every tour, across every shift. You understand the more global picture. That GPS setting goes from like 10 feet to 110 feet. And you're like, okay, it's not as easy as I send an email, he receives it, and then it gets fixed.
Yeah.
There's a whole lot of red tape you got to cross. There's budgets and finances and different departments in the city that need to check this box before it gets fixed. So when I came back to the firehouse, I was a much more, I wouldn't say better company officer, but I was a more complete package than when I left the firehouse initially. So 2018, I came back, and I call it going to college. I went to college for 5 years and came back and realized that a lot of the stuff that I complained about before as a company officer, and not knowing what administration had to do in order to make shit happen, is not really their control. A lot of it is out of their control. I tried my ass off when I got there to get things done right away, like I would want it at the firehouse. And sometimes it's just not possible, man. And then till today, like I said, I ended up to where I'm at today. I'm riding a truck. I'm a captain. I enjoy it. I got a great group of guys, and I just started year 23 in October.
Congrats.
Thank you.
So when they pull you, is that the path for everyone going from lieutenant to captain, that you go to days, or they just pick if it makes sense, like for you going to training?
They don't. Some organizations down here do. It's funny you mentioned that, because I did meet a lot of guys in my time on days that their organization, once they get promoted, their first stop is 40 hours. And at first, it didn't make sense to me. I'm like, it's kind of bullshit. Not everybody needs to go to 40 hour. If you're not a training guy, they're going to try to force you to be a training guy. I just happened to be a training guy, and I enjoyed it. Some guys were just forced to go there by other organizations, and they were just counting the days to go back to work. Whereas we applied for the position in my organization. The offgoing training officer was coming back to the shift, and the spot opens up for the union contract, and everybody has to put in a resume and do an interview for the position. Interested parties, and then you get selected, and that's how I ended up there. And then when I came out, the same thing. I announced that I was coming out. They put it out for 30 days. Interested parties applied. They ran through a series of interviews and resumes, and my replacement was chosen. And then I had a month to train them before I left. They kept both of us on 40 hours for a month, and then I came back to the floor.
Is there a like a time limit for how long you're on that 40 hour, or is it really just up to you?
No, it's like I compare it to like it's command staff. So the fire chief makes a decision.
Yeah.
As long as you have the same fire chief and you're doing a good job, he can keep you there. Or sometimes fire chiefs come and go, and you go with them. Yeah. Being part of an administration, I'm part of that group. But I made it through 5 years, 3 different fire chiefs.
Wow.
And it was a learning curve. I learned a lot. And I was very fortunate. I left what I wanted to. I ain't gonna lie to you. When I got there, I told everybody, I kept joking. I'm like, I'm signing a 36-month lease. It's a 36-month lease, boys. I'll be back. I'm gonna take a year to learn the job, a year to make impacts, and a year to get out. And I ended up staying there for 5 years because I fell in love with it because I was having a lot of good traction and movement to the projects and things I wanted to see that I would complain about. That my guys would complain about the firehouse.
Yeah, and you can make a direct impact and
absolutely. You have a direct line to the fire chief.
Yeah.
You have a direct line to the fire chief. It was great. And if the guy trusts you, it's a home run.
Do you guys
mine really did.
Do you operate with a committee as well, or so? Like my organization, we got a training officer. He's 40 hours. However, for us, captain is really a shift commander. We're only like 50 people on my department. So whatever the reason they call it captain, it is what it is. But you go up and out, right? So now he was a shift commander, which would be captain for us. Now he's in in a 40-hour week. And then we have a committee essentially that helps him, do the things that he needs to get done. Like he does most of the high level stuff, but we can be part of writing lesson plans and delivering training and that kind of stuff. Do you have that?
Same. So I did have that at the time. I had we refer to it as the training bureau, tomato.
Yeah.
So our training bureau was made up of 9 fire guys, 9 EMS guys, 18 total. That's what I was budgeted for. Those 9 guys were fire instructors. The other 9 guys were EMS instructors, since we provide fire-based EMS.
Yeah.
So a lot of our CEUs annually for our paramedics need to be covered, as well as the fire stuff for the ISO. And we had a training center, and through the training center budget, I would pay them. And I would use them accordingly. I knew what my budget was for the year. So if this month, let's say we're doing ground ladders or portable ladders for every company, I'd have 2 guys out there every day for X amount of dollars per hour, and they work there on their off-duty time.
So they would provide the instruction. Would do the company officers then as well, or is that more like informal where they do what they need to do and you're
I would provide, or we as a bureau come up with a job performance requirement. We refer to them as JPRs. Our job performance requirements, our task would be sent out to all the companies, knew what they were going to. When they would get there, 2 guys that I hired to teach would run the companies through the drill. The company officer that's coming to the training, he's got carte blanche to handle his crew the way that he wants and to work with the training guys to accomplish that specific JPR. Any questions from the company officer about the task, about the way we're teaching it, it gets funneled through the 2 guys teaching that day. And then if I was available, I'd be the 3rd guy and show up, if I could get out of the office or wasn't doing some administrative stuff.
How diverse was that bureau then, in terms of like experience levels and rank and age and all that? Were you guys pretty all over the place, or?
Yeah, all over the place. It was all over the place because in Florida, you got to be on for 6 years to take the Florida State fire instructor test.
Okay.
So everybody had a minimum of 6 years. And they had taken, in addition to becoming a Florida State fire instructor, the state of Florida requires you to take other classes through the State Fire College to be eligible after 6 years to test as a fire instructor. So we're very fortunate. We had a lot of guys that taught at the local fire academies, minimum standards and stuff. And those were all my buddies, and I was using them and putting an extra cash in their pocket.
That's cool. Yeah. Yeah, we're somewhat similar, I guess, in Illinois. I don't think there's like a necessarily like you have to. I want to say it's like 2 years or something like that before you can get your initial instructor class, which is just to teach, and then the instructor 2 for us is to be able to write plans and lessons and all that other stuff. But uh, yeah, I don't. There's no. I mean, there's just a state test, as far as I know. There's really not much more. So that's pretty interesting that there's more involved with it than just a
Yeah,
class essentially.
it's a different course called it's like course delivery. You got to take a couple classes, course design and presentation, and they're provided through the Florida State Fire College.
That's cool. That's
You got to
really
do
cool.
40 hour, all 40-hour classes. You got to take before taking the state
Oh
class.
wow, they're all 40 hours. That's
Yeah, yeah, all
wow.
classroom.
That's really cool. Um, Last little bit before we get into
Hmm.
Maydays and what we're. I mean, I could talk training all day too. So you're putting a quarter in me
Hmm.
with that. But um, where did you learn? Was there a substantial moment, I guess, or was there maybe a group of people? I know you got locked in pretty young and early, but
Hmm.
that really taught you about firefighter culture and values.
Yeah, like I said earlier, it was at the firehouses we were riding at. The people that took us under the wings, the guys that ran the Explorer program at the time. So I'm going back to um, you know, 1994, 95, 1996, right? During that time, I was a cadet. The guys that were training us and in charge of us, uh, they were referred to as advisors. Those fire and their firefighters and company officers for that organization, at the time, they had 25, 30 years on. So these guys came on in the 70s, and they were trained by guys that came on in the freaking 40s and 50s. So they taught us a lot of those old school traditional fire service values that to this day I carry with me. And those men, like I said, being that I was there so often, those men really shaped me into wanting to do the fire service the right way, what I believe to be the right way. And they influenced me tremendously. Like they were rock stars to me, Alex. These guys were rock stars. They could do no wrong. I see these guys come out of fire, and I was like, "Wow, Jesus Christ, man! It might as well be Bon Jovi in the '90s." Like, oh, there he comes, man. It's amazing, And then at the firehouse, they were breaking balls, and I'm like, "You guys, my dad's age, look how funny he is, and what they're doing. They're childish, but they're also professional." And I just loved everything about it. And those were the men that shaped me my first, 5, 10, 15 years before I met people from my organization and started carving my own path.
Yeah. Would you say that that's what drew you in more so than like the calls and like the
Absolutely.
fire? Yeah. Yeah.
Absolutely. I knew nothing about fires, nothing about calls. I just knew these guys were awesome
Yeah.
and they did really cool shit.
Do you think that off topic, not one of the questions, do you think that maybe that still exists to a certain extent with the next generation coming in? Do you think that that's what's drawing people in? Would you say that it would be more about the environment versus what we actually like do on calls, I guess? Do you get what I'm saying?
Yeah. So I don't know about you guys, but we're having a hiring issue down here in Florida that you wouldn't believe. Yeah, attrition is huge and recruitment is lower than ever. Even for our major organizations down here, the big county fire departments that would normally have people like sleeping outside for 2, 3 days just to be in line for an application, and they get 4 or 5 thousand applicants each time. They're struggling too, and I just happened to have finished interviews for my organization probably about 2 or 3 weeks ago, and today this is what I noticed. This is my cliff notes for 3 weeks of interviews that I just finished. The today's applicants are way more informed financially and contractually than we ever were when I came on. I was just happy to have a job, right? I was happy to have a job, be a firefighter, be in an organization, be running calls and doing what I wanted to do because of the people that were doing it before me. Contracts were there eventually. Money was there better than ever at the time, right? Like, holy cow, they pay me for this. This is great. But these guys come in talking about annual final compensations, colas, incentives, percentages, writing assignments, retirement age, retirement benefits, healthcare packages. They're coming in with degrees and bachelor's degrees and master's degrees, and that crowd is completely different than the crowd that I came on with, and even the crowd that I was hiring when I was in 40 hour, just 6 years ago. And that's my main takeaway from the last 3 weeks. How informed, because it's available now on these things,
Yeah.
how informed these guys can just open freaking Instagram or open one of the Facebook and look at a fire department, see 4 or 5 reels on it, see their numbers, see their fires, pull their contract from their city website or county website, and it's a wrap. We didn't have that available when we were around, So when we were started, we're still around, thank God. But the consumer today or the applicant is so much more educated than we were, and for some reason, maybe because of that education and that separation or lack of exposure to guys like I had, they just haven't had that exposure. All they have is the numbers to play with, and the numbers are just down for us. It's hard to draw a 18-year-old kid coming out of school to do this job day in and day out, whether it's this or any type of civil service position, whether they're picking up trash or putting handcuffs on people. It's a tough draw in 2024, in my opinion, because everything else on this that I just showed you steers you in a different direction. Hey, you
Yeah.
want to make 300 grand fast? Start a business, do this, that, the other, work from home. Hey, you want to make 250 grand fast? You don't have to work a 9 to 5. You don't have to go to school. Start a Facebook page and go, or start a YouTube and go. It's happening, and these kids are just not being drawn to that. And we need to do a better job with the fire service to start, gearing our targeting our ads and our exposure to these upcoming kids, because this generation needs to see more of what we really do as something that's cool and doable, not as just a figure. 1+1 = 2. Oh, these guys are making X amount of money at starting, where I can go, sit at home, play video games, record myself on YouTube for the same amount of money.
Yeah.
So, man, it's a challenge. I don't know what the answer is.
Yeah, I don't know. We're in the same boat. I mean, absolutely. Illinois is hurting as well. Everywhere's hurting. Like I've been full time for 6 years, traditional full time, and I've been in the fire service for 14 years. So I was contract. I was some other ways, but traditional, IFF full time
Right.
for 6. And I remember testing for 3 or 4 years just to get to that. And now, we barely. There's people with 9 applicants when it's all said and done, and and that's only been in the last 2 or 3 years that it's really just gone down, and everyone's like, it's a whirlwind. Like, what are we doing wrong? What are we missing out on? But yeah, you are right. Like, you can find a contract like that pretty much and read all about a department, and with social media, it's very easy to talk to people. So you can get every bit of information about an organization. We're in that pain right now in my department of trying to figure out how we can change recruitment, how we can change advertising our department for applicants, and it's hard, man.
Like where I'm at in South Florida, this is a heavily populated area as far as the state of Florida goes. So we're looking at the top 3 counties in South Florida. We got Miami, we got the Fort Lauderdale area, which is Broward County, then we have the Palm Beaches, West Palm. Those 3 counties alone probably have over 26 plus 10, 36, 46, probably about 50 fire departments in 3 counties, 50 different fire departments. So these guys can apply in 50 different fire departments in like major metropolitan or suburban areas, and they can compare 50 different contracts, and that's what's happening.
Yeah.
And so we're feeling that pinch, we're feeling it real hard.
Yeah, especially tier 2 where they got to commit for us. Like, you got to commit more than 30 years for some people. I got a junior guy on my shift who's my probationary guy that I'm teaching, and he's got to work, I think, until 35 technically.
Yeah, wow, yeah.
Like, he's got to do 35 years, and that wasn't the thing. I'm a second gen. My dad's generation, that nowhere near that, right?
No.
20 years on, 50 years old, and you can split. And
yeah.
I think that maybe that is why people are paying more attention to contracts, because you're like, if I've got to do even longer, I got to make sure that this makes sense to me. So I can't fault someone for that, right? I guess that makes sense.
Not at all, man.
But yeah, recruitment. Like, if somebody could figure that out, they need to write a book for sure. Cause
for real.
They make plenty of money off of it. So before we get into Maydays and line of duty deaths, it's been a rough week here for us with Virginia, and I wanted to at least make sure that I acknowledged Virginia and L.A. and Minnesota, where those police officers and that fire medic got shot at that domestic. So, it's been a rough week. I think we're at
really
11 of the year. line
Yeah.
of duty deaths. I want to say, and I might be wrong, but I'm pretty sure it's not official yet. So when we talk about Mayday, and I'm not going to get on too big a soapbox, that's why you're here. But
Mhm.
like, it's not that all of those were necessarily Maydays, but our job is still dangerous. Our job is still something that you got to be on top of your game for. And even if you are, things can still go wrong. So this topic is a big deal, and that's why I love talking about it, because I think it normalizes talking about
Mhm.
how our job really can be dangerous, right? And I think people forget that sometimes. So, introduce Mayday mindset. Give people a little bit of insight about how you came to this, how you started sharing it and became passionate about it. Um, yeah.
Like everything else in my life, it just kind of organically evolved. There was never a big plan to do a Mayday mindset or call it Mayday mindset or do a RIT class. That was never, ever, 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 ever a thought, right? It would just organically happened. It was something that I was drawn to for a long time because of personal issues, because of I had I had a real good idea of what I thought training should look like based on my beliefs, right? It could be wrong, but they were mine. And I felt very strong about them. And when I would see training done a certain way, right, wrong, or indifferent, what I considered to be not the best way, right, I would circle back, pull my guys aside, and then deliver the same information in a different manner. And I started getting a lot of good feedback from it, right? Then fast forward to like 2010, I said this on another podcast one time. I myself and one of the guys that I teach with, Timothy Gleason, myself and Timmy Gleason were working in Haiti. I'm part of the Urban Search and Rescue Team, South Florida, so I'm part of Florida Task Force 2. And we were in Haiti after the Haiti earthquakes for about 2 weeks. And in that time period, we were working in a pancake collapse, four-story, big box commercial store um, for what we knew to be a live victim. So we were just taking turns, breaking concrete, trying to get from one aisle of this collapsed commercial big box, like it's Walmart type place, right? It has a different name, but it makes no difference. But this Walmart type big box building where it has those aisles of merchandise had pancaked, and the actual aisle shelf of merchandise was holding the floor above, and they had compressed. So these 7.5 foot shelves had compressed down to about 3 feet with all the product in between, and it was holding the floor above on both sides of us. So we had the space of an aisle with height of only 3 feet. And now we were at the end, very end of an aisle, trying to break through the shelf, cut through the shelf itself to get to the aisle next to it where we thought the victim to be, we had made verbal contact with. In that process, there was a major aftershock, and the whole building started shaking, and we got caught in this aisle, in this space, about I don't know, about 25 feet in this floor, uh, face down, with our breakers breaking and cutting, and it was a mayday situation, right? We ended up backing out, leaving our tools. It was like a fun house. The whole we refer to it as a pipe now because it was that's what it felt like. We were in a pipe, moving and in a wave-like motion. I'm from Florida. I've been through hurricanes. I don't do tornadoes, or earthquakes, or snow. And I'm backing up, backing up, backing up because you had no room to turn around. You can only go in head first and back out feet first. You couldn't get, So the guy in front of me is doing that. I'm doing that. I'm getting kicked in the face. Everything I thought that I would do if my life was ever in peril doing this job, I did not do in 2010. I absolutely did not do it. I reacted like any civilian would if something scared the shit out of me. I panicked and just wanted to get out and cared only about my own well being. It wasn't about team, it wasn't about we, it was about me. And I didn't know that at the moment, but those cognitive processes weren't happening. It was in the after, hours after, days after, weeks after, where I was like, shit, I'm not as good as I thought I was. What happened to all this RIT training? What happened to all this Mayday training? I just fell right back to where I'm a regular human being. Why? Was I trained wrong? Am I not good enough? And that self doubt, those questions started me down this road where organically I started, gathering information on Maydays, gathering information on human behavior under stress, gathering information on stress inoculation, gathering information on the way that the human brain learns. the way that the limitations and the capacities are of applying skills under stress when you're in full fight or flight. And, those books, that information weren't around for the fire service back then. It was all military books and police officer books and Grossman and this guy and the other guy. And I would just switch the word officer or the word soldier to firefighter in my head as I'm reading these books, and, slowly that information became available. Project Mayday came out. Started looking at NIST and started looking at NIOSH reports, and studies started being done. And it was just, I went down that rabbit hole. And before I knew it, I had this presentation that I didn't know if it would work or not. And I started giving it, and it just grew legs and evolved. And the presentation's in a constant state of evolving, because the more I learn about it, the more students that run through it, the more data that we gather, it changes every single year. And then whatever mood I'm in when I give the presentation, if I walk in the door and I saw something where I'm at as far as building construction, staffing, deployment models, conversations with, let's say I go to your department and you and I start talking the night before, and I drive through your town, and the day I go to the presentation will be completely different if I gave it back home, just because of this different set of variables and predictable failures that we all work with, because the fire service is very regional. Fire service deployment, and fire service jargon is very, very regional. It's a local sport. Mm-hmm. So yeah, we're all firefighters, but we all play the same sport in different parts of the country. So my field looks nothing like your field, and the presentation is never the same. But that's what got me going, Alex, and that's how it became the Mayday Mindset. It was actually had another name before that. I switched the name of it just to not step on people's toes. It was close. It was too close to somebody else's name, and that's when I realized that people were actually paying attention to it, because I got a phone call like, "Hey, dude, that's my class." And I was like, "Oh, sorry, dude. This is the local thing. I didn't know you were following me on social media." And then I kind of changed the name on it not to upset anybody. And I enjoy it, man. What cooler thing can we do than save one of our own, It's something that we don't do enough of. It's a lot of experience or lack of. We have an experience problem in the fire service when it comes to maydays and RIT. And we need to find a formula that works. I'm not saying that mine works. I'm saying that mine is not Rob's, and mine was not passed down to me on a kitchen table by generations before. Mine does not come out of a firefighter survival book. Mine is just a bunch of information that we gathered and applied it to human behavior under stress. You put it into a big pot, gave it a stir, keep up with it, so it's constantly growing organically, and turned it into what it is today.
Yeah, I mean, you're right that instruction, at least at a basic, firefighter level, I don't really think. I mean, maybe it's starting to grow. Obviously, I'm not. Mm-hmm. I'm a little away from fire academy, but all we were pretty much taught was how to carry a guy up and down the stairs, and that was it. Like it was drag somebody and how to call Mayday, which at the time was Lunar, which I know. I know that you've talked about who, what, where, and keeping it simple and personal and all that, which. Totally about that. I think that makes a ton of sense. And but yeah, so that was pretty much it. And then you do some drills later on in your career, and you realize, like, I mean, I haven't been on or knock on wood, a real Mayday, but yeah, you do some drills later in your career, and you're like, well, I'm not prepared for this at all. What do you mean this guy's stuck underneath whatever or something? And then when I went to IFSI, which I'm telling you, you got to get some of your guys to take that class, man. It is awesome. But you really realize, like, what actually can work and what really is just cool stuff that someone does on a bay floor. And so somewhere the book in real life, which is kind of the tune for most things, like they don't intersect very well. So learning about breathing, through like Gillespie and Rick George, like that whole, like, nobody talks about that in the fire academy. So it's cool to see, like, all these different, bingo. like your Mayday Mindset has that as an influence in it, right? So, like, those are all 100%. Things that connect together, which actually is real, down and dirty, and makes sense when shit hits the fan, right? Steve Mouch is in the chat. He says a knife in the elevator, or knife fight in the elevator, and I've heard you talk that, and I love that analogy, right? Like,
it's true.
Yeah.
It's true, I can cover it real quick on we're on here. You get it recorded on here. I talk about it because a lot of the skills that we are taught, like you just said, in the book and or on the apparatus floor, you don't have to get crazy and go take a class somewhere. But if you just do that with your company at a company level, we were taught the way that I was taught on the floor If a lot of those skills that we're taught are not completely reproducible under stress, below 3 feet, and zero visibility, which is where the majority of our MAYDAYs are happening, over 70%. That's a huge number in the world of statistics when we're looking at 15, 16, 17,000 plus documented MAYDAYs, right? Over the last 7, 8 years. So if we're looking at these numbers, we understand the atmosphere and the environment that we're playing in. The information that we're teaching our people needs to be applicable and reproducible under stress. So if it requires a lot of thinking, if it requires time, if it requires the use of dexterity, if it requires them not operating above not operating above 3 feet, and it's something that we should not be teaching as a primary plan. Am I saying to get rid of it? No. Am I anti-webbing? No. I'm saying the data and real life and what we know to be true, factual about human behavior, and it's facts over feelings, what we know to be true about human behavior under stress does not support a lot of the shit that we're taught. All right. So do I eliminate it completely? No. But I keep it as an alternate or a contingent or an emergency plan. But I will never teach it as a primary plan. I do not want that to be the knee-jerk reflex when confronted with these situations. When I was in that pipe and the earth started moving, the way that the earth is not supposed to move, and I was getting hit by rocks in my helmet, and everything slowed down, and I remember looking downrange and seeing the breaker that I had just let go of take 3 hits in the air as it was falling because everything slowed down that much. If anything that I was taught is not usable in that space, then it's freaking garbage. Then it's useless information, right? It's a knife fight in an elevator. That's my lunar like example. If lunar itself, let's just touch on that since Steve brought it up. Lunar itself, the reason that I steered away from it years ago is because of that and that reason only. I know it's going to happen to the human brain under stress. You know what's going to happen to it now, right? If I show up to dinner at an elevator, at a hotel, dinner just says on the 8th floor. Boom, I hit the button to the freaking 8th floor. There I am. I'm in the elevator. Right before the door shut, a well-dressed gentleman walks in, stands next to me. We both nod. You know, so what you do in the elevator. What floor? He tells me top floor. I'm like, oh, coincidentally, I'm going to the top floor too. I hit the button. Now the elevator starts moving. As soon as the elevator starts moving, he opens his jacket and brings out a big-ass knife, Crocodile Dundee. And he starts coming at me like a Tasmanian devil. I am unarmed, unprepared, and in the wrong mindset. I'm going to dinner. Now I'm in a box, and this thing is moving, and I can't get away. Suddenly, as he's attacking me, and I'm trying to defend myself in a box, elevator stops, doors open, and my battalion chief pops in and says, hey, 162 divided by 12. And it's just the door, and the elevator keeps moving. And this guy keeps coming at me. 2 floors go by, battalion chief pops his head in again and says, hey, Rob, 22 times 27, just the door. Elevator keeps moving, he keeps coming at me. There's no way that under that stress, I can answer those questions. That guy is a knife, and that weapon is trying to hurt me. That guy with a knife and that weapon is trying to hurt me. I cannot focus not because I'm undertrained, not because I don't know MMA, not because of any other reason other than I'm human. The part of our brain that kept us alive from cavemen to saber-toothed tigers, if you believe in that shit, all right? That part of my brain is still in there. And when it perceives a threat, that amygdala hijacks my system, and I can only focus on the threat. And the only thing I can do, and the only bandwidth that's left outside of addressing the threat, is what's automatically instilled as a reflex. What's been created and drilled into me 1,000 times in the via formed realistic training and created an automatic reflex. That automaticity is the only bandwidth that my brain has left while it's attacking or being attacked by a threat. So when we talk about lunar, you got to memorize location, unit, name. I get it. It's a policy. It's written down. The guys that wrote it had the best intentions in the world with the information that they had available at the time. It was better than nothing. But knowing human behavior under stress, listening to these MAYDAYs, I listened to the MAYDAY of Virginia, the exploding house the other day, right? If anybody has not listened to the MAYDAYs, please do so. Every single member did a tremendous job calling their MAYDAY. Every single member gave what truck they were on first, who they were next. The last thing they gave was where they were in the building. When we teach where, who, what, I start with where, because there is no guarantee that in that environment you're going to get another transmission out. But if you say Mayday, mayday, mayday. In the basement, radio cuts off or your body stops working. At that point, if I'm the outside chief officer or incident commander, I can start geolocating resources and help to the basement. At least I got that. In my opinion, that is more important than who you are, what truck you came on, what your name is, what your favorite color is, and that you enjoy long walks on the beach. You need to tell us where you are first, because there's no guarantee you're going to be able to transmit again. And that's my example for Lunar and the elevator knife fight.
Spot on. Yeah, absolutely true. We all go that lizard brain in that. It's human nature, like you said, and overcomplicating it doesn't help, right?
Does not. Does not.
So, when we talk about maydays and injured firefighters or stuck fire, whatever it might be, whatever the problem might be, I don't think we can really get to the end without talking about self-rescue and the importance of what to do in some of those situations. Obviously, that's a super broad topic, and a lot of it's kind of what we were just already talking about, right? But could you share some insight, I guess? So, I mean, you went through it in a way, right? And so obviously you've learned some things since then. So, what are some thoughts maybe as a firefighter, you have a problem and you're going to be calling a mayday and pretty much that's it. The table's been set and now you're right there. So some first things with self-rescue.
Right. So a lot of the stuff we cover in our program, it teaches us how to stay out of trouble. So if we're going to be teaching self-rescue, predictable is preventable, right? Predictable failures are there. So the first thing we got to do as instructors is identify what the predictable failures are. So the students can now know what to look for, right? It's a form of progress capture. All right, tell me what I'm looking for, Rob. That's what I'm looking for. Understood. Now, if I see it, what's my proper reaction to that? All right, you see that, you go from this box to this box. If that box doesn't work, you go from this box to that box. If it does work, you stay in this box, but now you go over here. So that's the way that we start building a good self-rescue mechanism, because we put so much effort in teaching people how to get out of trouble, but we forget to teach them how to stay out of trouble, right? So let's teach them how to stay out of trouble and then focus on having them get themselves out of trouble. So the numbers, like whatever it is, 47% or above of maydays resulted in being mitigated via self-rescue. So when I walk into this fire with between my two ears and those 6 inches, that information, that knowledge, that positive experience and information and training is going to be the one that's going to get me and hopefully my members out. It's maydays are a lonely thing. Misery is a team sport. Misery loves company. And if you're in a mayday, hopefully there's somebody else there with you to help you out. Maybe you can help each other out. But most likely you're going to be on your own, and you have to be able to function on your own. And by understanding what you're capable of and what your body can do under stress and not do under stress, you're going to be successful. So training to understand what your limitations are. Training to understand what your comfort zone is. Training just above your comfort zone to start building a little form of resiliency. And then once that becomes comfortable, you move on. But you can't just jump in there day one and be like, all right, self-rescue training. I'm going to go into this confined space. I'm going to take my air pack off. I'm going to position a range remove. I'm going to do a hot mask swab. I'm going to do 20 burpees in between. And I'm going to jump out a window and use my personal escape device. That's going to lead you into an algorithm you don't want to be in, because you're not going to be successful most likely. You're going to do a bunch of unrealistic shit that's never going to happen. And you're going to think that that's normal. And then that unrealistic preparation is going to fail you when the real thing happens. So in order for you to properly prepare, the first thing is identify what's predictable and then prevent it. Identify what's going to get us in trouble. Understand that it's okay to like back out. Understand that it's okay to not push through things that shouldn't be pushed through. But caution and courage should never be in competition with each other, because it results in bad things. And then last but not least, bro, the way that I carry my gear, the shit that I carry my gear is for me. And it's usable and accessible under stress and below 3 feet, while wearing oven mitts, while having loss of dexterity, while suffering auditory exclusion, while all the things that we know to be true in a real mayday or fight or flight. So the area between my regulator heads-up display, my purge valve, my vibro alert if you carry that, my remote gauge, my pass device, my flashlight, all right, my radio if I'm carrying it the right way, and those lower pockets, that area from shoulder to shoulder regulator up to my SCBA belt buckle, I refer to that area as my action area. all the data that I've accumulated, that I've seen, that I've read tells me in order for you to have access to something you need for self-rescue, you need to have that primary tool in that space, because most of our members end up in one of two positions, either face down, right, or on one side or the other. Very rarely do they end up on their back because they're wearing a bottle. Okay, most of the time they're one side or the other, or face down prone. The data goes a little bit further and says the majority of these guys only had access or use of one arm or the other. So anything below your belt buckle and your pant pockets or that little weird pocket behind in the calf area, however your gear set up, anything in that area that you carry down there for self-rescue is inaccessible. The data is already available. It's been there for years. If you look at it, extrapolate it, look at the information, you know that it's not available to you. So I keep a primary set of cutters on my top right, a secondary backup set of cutters on my bottom left for entanglements. Entanglements have gone up over the last 3 years. Okay, I keep my remote gauge on my opposite side where I can go ahead and check my pressures, pass device activation, turn it on, turn it off. I keep my remote mic hanging in this area here so I can talk to the outside world. If I want to give myself a breath, I have a purge valve, I have my Viber alert, and my SCBA happens to have a heads-up display. So I mean, my green lights, my amber lights, my red lights, I know where I'm at as far as air goes, okay? In my bottom pockets, I don't keep anything that I need immediately because I know I will not have access to it. So if I do not have it in that action area, quote unquote, I know that I cannot use it for self-rescue. And there's no such thing as, today I'm going to keep it on my top right, tomorrow I'm going to keep it on my bottom left. Oh, it's Wacky Wednesdays, I'm going to take the cutters out of my right and put it in my leg pocket. It's nobody would ever do that if you were in the military. Nobody would ever do that in law enforcement. They keep their shit the way it is each and every time, because in law enforcement and the military, when that paper target you're used to start shooting back at you, and now you're in a two-way range because you're in real combat, you cannot think, oh, where's my lethal? Where's my extra ammo? Where's my non-lethal? Where's my spray? These things cannot go through your head. You fall into an automatic, drop mag, clean, set it up, and go back and engage the target. In our world, if I'm running around, moving shit around this week, that week, and every time I see a podcast, I change my shit around. Eventually, if I do not train with it, I'm going to get caught with my pants down because it's hard to go undefeated in this business. And I'm going to start reaching for shit that's not there or keeping it in places that are inaccessible to me. And the data says it. And I'm going to get jammed up. Real quick story. I was at a Mayday one time where one of my company officers, he's retired now, got caught in a second floor soffit catwalk area collapse. The fire was running the common attic. We had been on the scene for like 25 minutes. Everything came down on him, and he got pushed up against the banisters. And everybody on the first floor looked up and saw it. So we watched the whole thing happen. He never even called the Mayday because the guys were looking at it when it happened. We ran upstairs, got the debris off of him, delayered it, got him out. Thank God he wasn't hurt. Before he goes to leave, I jump into the ambulance to give the old captain a once over and let him make sure he's okay. And I opened the back doors, and he had a thick New York accent. Marlboro Reds every day. And this is what he told me, Alex. That was his voice, by the way. And this is exactly what he told me. I said, "Hey, Cap, how you doing?" And he used to call me Ram. That was his nickname for me, for Ramirez. He said, "Hey, Ram, I'm good. If I could have reached my leg pocket, they'd have found me smoking a Marlboro Red." And I laughed, and they closed the doors, and they left. Fast forward 10 years, here I am doing the Mayday mindset. I understand the data. He was laying on his side. The data says he can't reach anything down there, and that's why he couldn't reach his Marlboro Reds.
Yeah.
Okay, so that one incident I was at matched the data 10 years later.
That's crazy. Yeah.
Yeah.
And an offhanded joke, too. That's even better. Like,
yeah. 100%.
100%. I'll tell you what, I definitely can sit here and say that I was that guy that carried everything for a very, very long time. And, I'm going to blame my dad a little bit, but not really. Like, my dad, he would tell me, like, hey, if you're on a call, like, if you want to get known as the guy that's good, right, that the hungry mouth that gets fed. Like, if your lieutenant goes, man, we need a screwdriver right now. Like, if you're the one that's, hey, I got it for you. Like, and so he, like, when I was a kid and I got into the job, like, that was me. I had everything I could need. And then if I wanted a call where a lieutenant went, hey, I need whatever, and we didn't have it, I would add it to my gear. And it was only up until really you start looking at some of the information that's out there, and you really try to practically use this stuff, and you realize, like, this doesn't make any sense at all. Like, and like you're saying, streamlining, getting in that action zone, right? Like
Hmm.
I want to say David Pruitt talks like that, right? Because he's a
Hmm.
cop or something. And
Hmm.
I'm sorry, I'm butchering what other experience he has, but
Yeah.
it's the vest. It's the same thing with police officer. If you were to ask a police
Hmm.
officer where all the stuff is, they'd be able to
Yeah.
tell you exactly where it is, and it's all right here. So, yeah, it's phenomenal. And anybody listening, take that advice because Rob's dead on. Like getting that stuff in a position where you can use it without thinking is vital. Otherwise, you're never going to use it. You're going to panic with it, and you're not going to put it to use. So
You gotta
definitely
practice. You have to
practice with
practice
it.
with it.
Yeah.
Have to practice with it. Have to practice.
Yeah, you don't need a blow up mattress, you know,
No,
in your turnout gear. Like that's just not.
I was that guy too. I was that guy, Alex. I was that guy for many years.
Yeah, I think almost everybody goes through that phase.
Hmm.
My junior guy, he's asking about stuff to carry, and I kind of just told him like, hey, carry what you think, but I can't tell you that it's not good for you. You kind of have to
Hmm.
experience it. And I told him the same
Yep.
thing. You're sitting here
Mhm.
saying the same thing. We've all gone through it where we have so much stuff in our gear, and you really realize what you actually need or what you
Yeah.
may actually need, right?
Yep. 100%.
So, talking about equipment and not just what you carry, but more of like what a RIT crew carries. So I know we were all probably taught the tarp or
Hmm.
the ladder where you load everything up, and that's all well and good. I'm not crapping on that,
Right.
right? Like you should be prepared for anything, right? Obviously, you know, and we both know that data would show that most likely RIT is done by an interior crew that's already operating, right?
Right.
So a lot of that stuff, I'm not going to say is useless, but you
Mhm.
know, it's not your first line. So,
Right.
or really, even I know that there's some places that do like an IRIT, right, where it's like an
Hmm.
initial crew. What would you say would be some things that a RIT team should have in terms of that quick, rapid
Right.
deployment?
So that's the word, rapid. RIT is not fast, uh, especially if you're not prepared for deployment. So everything you do from the second you arrive on scene to this and get assigned RIT up until the Mayday gets called needs to be in order to be faster and more streamlined. Because how long can the member inside hold their breath? How long can the crews outside maintain tenable conditions to keep the fire and smoke off that down member? Everything we do has to be fast, Alex. Right? So that IRIT mentality, I don't have a problem with it. Give it a name. I don't give a shit. People love to give names to things, right? But you have to get there fast. You have to travel light. You have to be able to get there as fast as possible and just make contact with the victim because your primary plan each and every time shouldn't be arrive, find, package, convert, put, change. No, no, no. Just grab and go. Grab and go. Your primary plan should be grab and go. If you can make 25 feet into a house, make a right, find a down fireman who's not entangled in debris, and grab his shoulder strap and drag him out 25 feet to the front yard, that's a home run. That's a home run
Yeah,
because let's figure out what's wrong with this guy outside this IDLH, right? Get him breathing outside, give him air outside, do all that outside versus sitting in there in that smoke, in that unsurvivable space, and trying to fix a problem that we haven't fixed in our lives outside of training, but fully encapsulated. And that's my buddy. So I'm having all types of biological changes that are affecting my performance, my company's performance, my crew's performance, and the equipment that we're working with is not really set up to work in that environment. So that initial crew needs to understand that the equipment they bring needs to be something they can effectively move through an IDLH environment in a space they've never been in, under conditions they've also never been in. So the whole dump the truck on the tar, bring uh, the scoop basket or the Stokes basket, and bring the freaking ladder. I get it, dude. I get it. You're gonna need that stuff eventually if the first crew gets to them and the member is stuck underneath a bunch of debris, or you have to make three lefts, two rights, and they fell through a hole and he's in the floor below. I get it. You're gonna need that stuff. That's a more involved operation. But the data supports you getting there fast and getting them out fast. So when guys tell me, "Oh, Rob, what's the best way to get somebody out of a building or convert a down fireman?" My goal is never even to convert them. I teach the shit out of it. Here's a pickout strap. Here's this. Here's the other. My goal is to get them out. Find them and get them out. You got to be able to find them. You got to be able to get them out a window, get them onto a ladder, get them out the door. You don't have to go the same way you went in. You get them out, right? It's not a Pittsburgh drill. Get them out. Now, the equipment they carry needs to match the structure they're going to. Wood frame, ordinary, bring to the right type of salt. In Florida, I have very little ordinary wood frame construction. This is all concrete block and stucco, right, with lightweight roofs and impact hurricane glass. We're trying to keep the AC in and the hurricanes out. So I can't take a chainsaw to a freaking window and make it a door. I can't hit a window with my Halligan and break it. I need to put a saw on it to cut the glass because it's laminated. All right. My door jambs are recessed in concrete. So we have different forcible entry issues. Our residences are built like commercial properties up north. So we need to bring the right tools for the right building for the right type of construction. A. B. Post up in the right location where the members are incurring the greatest amount of risk. Identify that, see where the greatest amount of risk is being incurred, and post up there. Not on the command post, not on the alpha side, not on the street side, not on the one side. Post up where the members are incurring the greatest amount of risk. So if there's a crew's operating on the Charlie Delta side or the 3-4 side, second floor, and that's where the fire is pumping out of 3 different windows, and you're hearing the engine and the truck are up there searching and stretching. I have no business being across the street next to the medics. Do my 360, identify means of egress for the members, identify the way that we're going in if we have to go in, make it accessible if I have to loosen it, throw ladders up to the second floor window. I set my equipment up, run my run my rip bag, get all my tools in check, and talk to my members about how we're going to get in and out of this building if and when we get deployed. We have to think that a Mayday is a possibility, not a probability at that point. Taking that proactive position is going to help us tremendously, all right? If you see burglar bars, if you have that kind of environment where you work, if you see some type of reinforcement awnings or coverings on the window, we have hurricane shutters here in my house. To my right, my window has a hurricane shutter, and it's open right now, so you can see the light coming in. But if the hurricane, some people shut them year round, but they work at night and they want to sleep during the day, all right, and they keep the sun out. So you got to have the right tools for the right building, and then make sure that you're in the right position, and make sure that position's been either softened or identified how you're going to get in there if and when the Mayday gets struck. You don't do all that in the front end, you're going to fail tremendously. If you make contact with the patient and you decide that you're going to take the patient out a window and or a door, whoever the company outside is must identify that door or window that you just described, walk up to it, turn their back to it, and everything within their sight between that window and that ambulance needs to get pushed, cut, or cleared out in order to get them to the truck. Because once you get them out the window, we can't just start firefighter CPR like we do in the academy on the sidewalk or in the friggin' by the window. We got to get them on a gurney, and we got to get them off scene, out of that entire environment, because we're not going to fix them there. They're either going to need blood, they need air, they need hyperbarics, they need surgery, or they need a cyano kit. So let's get them to the right place for the right treatment.
Yeah, absolutely. And you were talking about, obviously rapid is an important part and the conversions and all that stuff. And, at Red Under Fire, like all they teach air straps movement. That's it. On repeat. Yep. If you don't have air, you're not doing straps. If your straps aren't tight, you're not moving. And it's just that over and over and over and over and over again. And by the time you get to the end of the class, it is like natural. Like you don't even have to talk. And they're a little. Sometimes they're a little, fireman-y with stuff, so they shit all over the pack conversion, which I mean, whatever. But they prove it though when you go down there,
right?
Or I shouldn't say down there. For you, it's up there, but either way,
right.
And it totally validates what you're talking about, right? Like people everywhere are doing this kind of RIT training, and it's proving that stuff. That the more complicated, the worse off it is. At the end of the day, get them out. Get them out. I remember, and my little short story, and I'm sorry, I'll keep it really short because I want to talk about the next topic. But one of the evolutions, we had to go through a collapse, right? And a simulated, obviously, collapse. But so we're going through all these holes, right? And one's a square, one's a circle, one's a sonotube. And while I'm crawling through the sonotube while dragging a rip pack, I think to myself, shit, we got to get a guy back through all this.
Yep.
And that's before, it was one of the earlier evolutions, right? I go dive into a room with another small square opening that I had to kind of shift to get through. I come in contact with the fireman and I assess him. I do the whole air part of it. And I just sat there, right? Like waiting, yelling for more help, right? And one of the instructors goes, "Hey, you got 2 arms, kid. You could drag him." I was like, "Oh shit, that's right." Tightened him up, dragged him to the hole that we came out. But like, those are just things that nobody's really taught in that way. You don't realize what you can do and what you're really capable of and how simple you can make it. And I think that that's one of the best things that I'm seeing out of RIT and self-rescue and firefighter survival that's been coming as of late, is really that simplicity behind things. And the effect that you can have is, just one firefighter on the crew can do a shitload of work if you really, really know what or commit to it, I guess. So
You gotta have the right people, though. You gotta have the right people, Alex.
Yeah, yeah,
You gotta. The problem is that you have to assign the right people. You have to assign the right people.
yeah. Which I guess if your department's relatively big, like you could probably make that happen if you're assigned, crews or whatever. Like I work on 4 jump companies, so a crew could be at the hospital and not even show up to the fire. You could
Mm-hmm.
be anything. Most of it, you could have mutual aid be writ, which actually for the most part ours is. But yeah, you're right. The crew assignment, that's a big. I guess that comes, at the battalion chief level where you know the
Yeah.
other departments and maybe, hey, those guys
Mm-hmm.
are studs. Let's put them on writ.
Yeah.
But
It's okay. Assign a capable team. The number one rule for a chief officer is not to, during a RIT, is not to create another Mayday.
yeah, yeah,
So don't create other Maydays by assigning the wrong people. If they can't truck, they can't RIT. They have to be able to truck the RIT.
yeah,
They have to show up on a truck. They just need to be able to truck.
yeah, absolutely, yeah. So I wanted to touch roll back real quick. So that initial crew, what things are you taking in? What are you thinking about bringing with you?
I'm bringing my RIT pack. We wear Scots, so I'm bringing my Scott RIT pack with us. I'm bringing the hand tools, and like I said, that match the construction of the building. We're bringing a rope in case we get into a big space or commercial space. We don't carry a fast board, any of that in my organization. Again, keeping it simple is a skill. So, but if we do have a involved RIT, the second a Mayday gets struck, we're very fortunate to deploy a technical rescue team or a squad, right? Anytime that you have a RIT operation with heavy entrapment, you're going to need special equipment, whether it's bottle jacks, shoring, extra shoring, or some type of heavy lifting equipment. And that's what that unit is dispatched for. So if they're not on the assignment, if they're not on the alarm, which 9 out of 10 times they're not, if and when a second alarm or greater gets struck, if and when a Mayday gets called, they're immediately deployed as that additional RIT team to start, breaking things down for us and helping us get heavily entrapped firefighters out. In case it's not one of those load and go situations. But again, we travel light because speed is the freaking answer, man. Efficiency and speed are the answer. The problem is time, and the only way we're going to fix the amount of time that the member or limit the amount of time the member is exposed to that environment is by getting them out of that environment. If I show up and it's not a load and go situation because they're heavily entrapped, or I have to go upstairs, downstairs, 2 lefts and 2 rights, and there's fire between us and the exit, and I have to start giving this guy or girl air because they have a regulator failure, mass failure, or they're out of air because they've been lost for the last 40 minutes. Now I got to stay and play, and I have to have the right equipment available to make that happen. But that's never the initial plan that we talked about earlier. The plan is to get them and go.
Yeah, yeah. Do you guys run? You mentioned you have Scots. Are you running the 5,500 psis or are 45s?
We're running on us. We're running 4,500.
Okay,
And the
right.
RIP pack of 55.
Oh, really?
Yeah, yeah.
So we're the opposite, and what we found was that if you take a bump off the RIP pack, it doesn't equalize in the way that through the universal connection. It's not quick.
Yeah.
It takes a lot
Yeah.
longer. So like
Okay.
you think like, all right, I'm working. I'll take a hit off the RIP pack, and you have to sit there for a little bit. And we've been finding that out when we've drilled, and I gotta like actually test it and sit down and really try it. It's just kind of been like while we've been working, and I've been like, that's taking a lot longer than I'd think it would. And we thought it was because a 5,500 air pack can't give. It can only
we're backwards.
Yeah. Well, that would
55 in the RIT and 45 in the members.
Yeah.
Just because that's what they bought. So
yeah, I mean,
there wasn't any scientific data behind it. It just happened to be what they bought.
Yeah, for us they bought the 55s because they were smaller bottles. But then I guess we just stuck with the same RIP pack, which was still 4,500 psi. It's an hour bottle, but
Got it.
I was just curious if you guys had some similar thing like that.
No cool shit.
Yeah, well, you mentioned in your questionnaire thing when I was coming up with topics about artificial stress training and stress responses, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so we talked a little bit about breathing. We talked about some of those other things. Obviously, we kind of know like the traditional stress training would be like the peanut gallery, just yelling at you a whole bunch.
Right. Right.
I would assume that you're not that kind of person. So what would you say would be an effective way to do some artificial stress training?
So it's scattered, right? So you gotta build up to it. You don't build automaticity or stress inoculation in a fire conference class or in a 40-hour class. You don't focus on inoculating the person from stress if you want to have them learn a skill. You can't do both at the same time, right? So what do I mean by that, Alex? I mean, I have to ask myself, you have to ask yourself as an instructor or company officer, What's my goal? Am I teaching a new skill, or does a member already know the skill, and now I'm a step ahead of where I would be with a new guy, and I can start injecting artificial stress in the form of something as simple as a stopwatch. Hey, these are the expectations, and go. Something as simple as making the room tighter and smaller, where normally they would be operating in a bigger space. Just shortening or decreasing that space is going to get them into a stressful state biologically, right? Or taking away vision. You can have somebody switch, put on fire gloves and do a hot bottle swap 3 times with full visibility. And if you put them on a monitor, their heart rate may be 80, 90. Same guy, blindfold them in the same room, same skill, and you'll watch your heart rate spike to 130, 140 just by taking away sight, because we're visual creatures. When you tell me you're timing him, you just augmented that, right? Now, can you just get somebody brand new and take away visibility, take away audio by giving some form of auditory exclusion or noise pollution, or in the form of sound, yelling, Metallica, Maydays in the background, chainsaws running, fast devices going off, zero viz below 3 feet, make it hot, in oven mitts, and expect them to fail? Absolutely, they're going to fail. They're going to fail. Not only are they going to fail, but they're going to fail learning as well. So the goal of artificial stress injection in training should be separate from skill and progress. If you're building a skill and creating progress, that's one form of training. Once they have that skill and progress already in place, now you can start injecting artificial training. And it doesn't have to be all at once. It needs to be gradual. To go back to what I said earlier, progress capture. Can you do the skill after being timed? Can you do the skill fully encapsulated and being timed? Can you do the skill fully encapsulated, being timed, and with lots of visibility? Can you do the skill fully encapsulated, being timed, with lots of visibility, below 3 feet? Let's decrease the space, right? And once they've mastered all of those, and now you can tell the student, hey, that time was awesome, great job. That last repetition is what you want to shoot for each and every time. Now the student understands what body, mind, and state where they needs to be in order to be successful. Now he can build on that platform. Otherwise, they're just chasing a target that's been moving the whole time, and they learn absolutely nothing. They just survive a drill, survive a skill, survive a class, survive a conference, and they never want to do it again. They just want to tell their buddies over beer how hard the class was, and they're going to get a T-shirt for it. That's not my goal. My goal is for the student to walk away learning how to learn. And learning for you and learning for me is completely different. So I can't go to a class and teach to the highest level or the lowest level. I have to teach to the individual level. And the reason the fire service doesn't do that is because it takes time. It's much easier for me to do with a company officer with 6 guys than it is for me to do at a conference with 36 guys that I've never met from different organizations. So artificial stress injection, there is a right and a wrong way to do it. The right way is to gradually take away the comfort of the end user. And once you take each comfort away, have them reach and master that level, and then start taking the next one away. You can't take them all away at once, because at that point, they're just surviving a skill or a drill. They're not learning. And our goal should always be learning. Otherwise, why are we doing this? And it goes back to the old training scars and all that. That's all you're going to build, man. That's all you're going to build. And we understand that anything above like 10% comfort zone, 7% comfort zone, you're outside that sweet spot, and the person doesn't want to do the drill anymore. They just want to get it over with. Take this gear off, get me out of this mask, get me out of this drill. I'm done. I don't want to do it again. Even though they're smiling and high-fiving, that's what's happening inside. It's not a positive experience.
Yeah.
Make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. The last little bit, at least in these questions that I got, was talking about realistic RIT training, and we've kind of been like dipping in and out of that, I think, a lot. And obviously, you could go attend a class that puts it to fire and all those other things, right? Mm-hmm. I'm sure that Illinois is Renner to Fire. It might be the only one that's really like that, but or it's one of very few. But I'm sure that there's ways and avenues for people to get that form of training, right? So what are some just things that people can do to make it realistic in their training?
The most realistic they can do is obviously get their heart rate up before they start a drill, because that's going to create the first set of biological changes, right? Have them learn the skill, de-robe it completely, the devil's in the details, break down the skill, slow down the skill, right? After they've broken the skill down, slowing the skill down. It's not how fast you can do it right, it's how slow you can do it right? And I think Brian Brush talked about this one time in the podcast, where we prematurely bring out the stopwatch all the time, constantly. Time them. Stop timing them until they're ready to be timed. They can learn the skill completely, and now a skill they've learned and ingrained can be applied under stress. Because now you start building automaticity the right way. The problem with building automaticity is that automaticity is a reflex and it doesn't know right from wrong. So practice doesn't create permanent. Practice doesn't create perfect. Practice creates permanence. So if you do it wrong over and over and over again, create that wrong automaticity. It's going to fail you in the right in the when you need it the most. So gradually build a skill, and then slowly make it more difficult. And that level of difficulty, those biological changes, those levels of difficulty, make and cause and create, make the training quote unquote realistic. Okay.
Yeah. Little bonus one that I thought of here that I wanted to ask you too. What would you say would be the number one skill that a firefighter can train on for RIT or self Mayday type scenarios? What's the number one thing?
Self, spatial awareness, and dexterity wearing fire mitts. Honestly, if you, and by spatial awareness, I mean zero visibility, identify the amount of space around you, wearing oven mitts, and be able to know where every part of your person and equipment is, and gain access to it with fire mitts on. So dexterity and spatial awareness make you a very, very good end user. We're visual creatures. We're both born with a gift of sight. We make the entire planet and every decision we make in visually. That's cool. That's not. That looks delicious. That's gross. She's beautiful. She's ugly. He's a cool dude. I want to fight him. That happens immediately. Okay? Through your eyes. When we put on gear and get blacked out, we show up at Mrs. Smith's house at 2 a.m. and shit goes left, you're still trying to take in information through your eyes, even though it's not available. And it makes you a really bad decision maker. Unless you practice with it constantly, and you practice with it and expose yourself. Our level of exposure is directly correlated to our level of comfort. So the more you practice with that gloved, zero visibility environment, you learn about spatial awareness. You start painting better pictures in your mind. Your mind becomes less dependent on taking visual cues, and then your hands become better with oven mitts. And if you can reach all your gear, your person in a space that you're in, and understand that you're operating with limitations because you were born with a gift of sight, Helen Keller, at that point, start increasing your survivability. And that's the best thing you can do for any fire skill. That's either mayday, packaging, dragging, finding, or self-rescuing.
Yeah.
Honestly.
Yeah. All right, so I'll close out with these.
Thank you.
I feel like we could talk forever about this. I'm really loving it, but I heard.
You're about to get a baby on the show right
yep,
now.
I heard children in the background, so yeah. I feel you. So we'll close out with these for now, and then hopefully we can chat more another time. But what's one mistake you learned from in your career and have grown from?
Like I told you, I'm still learning. We all are. I just messed up probably twice this week at work. And again, at a leadership level. I'm my own worst critic. I'm my own worst critic. So when I drive home in the morning, I ask myself every day, doesn't matter how shitty the shift was, how bad it was, what was happening with fire administration, what's not happening here, that or the other. Politics always have a place in the firehouse. You're going to stay working that as a company officer. But when I drive home in the morning, there'll be days that I'll ask myself, what did I do yesterday to prevent my members' Mayday? And if the answer is nothing, I failed them. Right? So I constantly kind of check myself, because you need that to refocus. Because if I went around thinking that I'm full of piss and vinegar and doing everything right, I'm going to start letting people around me down that depend on me to be on point. So every single morning, it's become a habit. At some point in my drive, I got about a 40-minute drive home, and I'll ask myself, what did I do yesterday, or prevent these guys from Mayday? And if the answer is nothing, I have to be reflective and self-evaluate my performance. What could I have done better? What am I going to pick up on next shift to make up for this one? Because I'm responsible for them and their families, and I take that very seriously. And then you always have to have a sounding board, Alex. You have to have a sounding board. One member, one person you can talk to, who you allow them to read the label of your jar. If we're inside the jar, you can't read the label. You need somebody on the outside to read the label of your jar for you. And I got guys like that I'll tell them what I did, and they'll be super honest with me. Like, yeah, Rob, you suck. And you need to hear that. You need that perspective. You need the men to grade you, and if somebody can mentor you.
Yeah, I love it. So I asked this question, and I want to frame it with context here. So I feel like a lot of firefighters have really influential people early on in their career, and you may not get an opportunity to tell them that they were influential or that they really set you on the right path. So who influenced you the most early on in your career?
Man, the list goes on and on and on and on. From the time that I was an explorer in high school, that's what they call the cadet program, right? And those guys I talked about earlier, Ralph Torres. I'll just say their name, just they'll get a kick out of it. Ralph Torres retired from Miami-Dade Fire Department. Biff Brannigan, deceased, retired from Miami-Dade Fire Department. And then in my career, every company officer, I learned something from Danny Steele, Hector Corona. These guys were company officers, chief officers that took a young kid and taught me how to be a fireman. And then when it comes to this arena that I'm in now, the first time I ever thought about ever doing this, the way that I'm doing it, like meeting guys like you and everybody else, was by, meeting and learning from Rick George. Rick George became a huge mentor of mine. He was the first guy that I ever heard talk and use these terms and relate biology, physiology, and performance. And he's my number one mentor.
Awesome. Yeah, he's incredible. Yeah,
yeah. There it is.
I was curious if the chair scooching around up above me was making the mic or not. I don't think it
He's
did.
My little guy. He's ready to go to bed.
Have you ever lost your passion for the fire service? And if you did, what'd you do to get it back, and what keeps you passionate?
He's going to come right upstairs right now, and then we'll be done in 5 minutes. Of course. The fire. I think we all have. We all have. The fire service career is by seasons. I always talk about that. It's by seasons. And some seasons are better than others, just like I had professional teams. The Bears ain't going to win every year. The Bulls were good at one time, then they weren't. So same thing with down here. Like my career has been up and down, and you got to enjoy the good seasons, hold on to those during the bad seasons, and know that it's coming back around. You just got to hold on to the good seasons. It's my best advice for anybody. It's going to come back around. You just have to be there and ready to enjoy it when it does. Don't ever let it get you too low or too high, because the good seasons are going to end. So live in the moment, and then when you're in a bad season, know that the good season's coming back around. Because man, those good seasons, they come and go, and they become memories. And you're like, God, we had it good. Those companies. Hey, Murphy, my dog's home. My dog's here too. Everybody's home. Yeah.
There we go. Oh, that's awesome. I can't.
Yeah.
I can't. I mean, what a great analogy for sure. You get a stranger to the fire service, either kid or public, or whoever it is, right? And you want to give them a sense of how fire service culture should work. You can put them with one person to do that and to guide them through that. They can either be alive or dead or whatever it is, but they get an opportunity. One person you're going to put them with. Who's it going to be?
I got to change your question.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I got to change your question. I will. You don't have to. Different parts of my career, I needed different people.
Sure.
1, 2, 3 a year. Rob wanted nothing to do with a chief officer who's in their 50s, and me how to be a young fireman. And now, 22-year Rob, looking at the future, like I really don't need the guys that were breaking my stones year 1, 2, and 3, from the backstab. To give me advice on how to clean a toilet and how to be a good station, member. So throughout my career, I've had different mentors. I think each and every one of us, like I said before, at some point during your career, you need to find that one person that's in a position to influence you and take you to the next step. And then you're going to find somebody else in that step to influence you and take you to the next step if that's your goal. I can throw names out there all day, man. There's guys that are doing the fire service so good. Like I'm so fortunate, Alex. Guys like you, guys like Corley Moore, people that are changing the fire service every day and making it better for these kids. That stuff that we didn't have when we were coming up. But to say one person's name would be unfair. I can't do it.
Fair enough. No, that's good. Honestly, that's a great answer in itself. So you're right. Like I think depending on the person, it does change of who you would put them with. You're totally right. Unique answer. You're the first one to do that. I love when people go off the script. The script's just to keep me organized. Otherwise, I'm gonna be like,
awesome.
All right, last one, so we can both get back to our kids. Best part of the job.
The men. That was easy. Best part of the job is the men.
Yeah.
Every good memory. The calls come and go. Yeah, we have a few good calls, few bad calls, but it's all about the guys. every good memory you're ever going to have. You talk to retirees, you talk to guys that have been out of the job 1 year or out of the job 30 years. Everything is about the men. Very few of them will sit there and talk about calls they ran. It's all about the guys. This guy did this guy did that, this guy did that for me, this guy did this for me, this guy was a prick, this guy was cool. The guys make the job what it is, and that will always, always be true.
I love it. Well, thanks.
Mm-hmm. Dude,
Rob, awesome having you on. I really hope one day we do get to talk about you coming up to IFSI and going to that class, because you would eat it up, man. It is, I couldn't push that class enough. And I hope I get to see you. I'm sure you'll be around FDIC or something, and we'll cross paths. So thanks again for coming on the show and sharing your insight.
Alex, thanks for having me, bro. Thanks for inviting me. I look forward to doing this again.
Yeah.
Put a little rush today, and I apologize because of our schedules. But we definitely could do a part 2 and actually dive deeper into each one of these topics. And we can both do story time. You can get yours in too.
I'm in. No,
but, I look forward to crossing paths, bro.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you so much. That's going to be it for us. So thank you guys if you watch live, if you're listening later on Spotify or wherever you're listening. So thanks, and have a good one.